I'm Lauren, 32 female. I live in a city that never sleeps, in an apartment that feels more like a charging station than a home, and I work as a senior project manager for a major tech firm. My life is a series of deadlines, budgets, and Gantt charts, a world of predictable logic I've built to protect myself. I always believed that if I controlled the variables in my professional life, my personal life would be a safe harbor. But I learned that the most devastating risks aren't in a project's scope. They're sitting right across from you at the dinner table, smiling while they plot your ruin. This is the story of how my own family tried to sacrifice my stability for their vanity, and how I used the very skills they always mocked, my meticulous planning and attention to detail, to dismantle their world with a single link sent in the dead of night. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. The day had started with a hollow sort of optimism. It was my 32nd birthday, a Tuesday, and I'd booked the day off work. My plan was simple: a quiet morning, a walk in the park, and then getting ready for the grand dinner I'd meticulously planned for weeks. This wasn't just any dinner. I had reserved the entire second floor of the Gilded Compass, a restaurant known for its panoramic city views and a price tag to match. It was meant for 60 people, my entire extended family, close friends, and a few colleagues who had become like family. For the first time in a long time, I wanted to celebrate something for myself, with everyone I cared about. My family, especially my sister Jessica and my father Mark, had always made me feel like the boring, practical one. Jessica was the dazzling PR consultant, all charisma and networking events. My dad, a financial advisor who preached fiscal responsibility to his clients but rarely practiced it himself, doted on her. I was the reliable one, the one who co-signed loans, the one who remembered anniversaries, the one who organized every family gathering. This party was supposed to be for me, but it was also, in a way, my attempt to prove that practical didn't mean invisible. I spent the afternoon getting ready, a quiet hum of anticipation in my chest. I chose a deep emerald dress, elegant and understated, and styled my hair myself. At 6:30 p.m., I took a cab to the restaurant. The manager, a polished man named Julian, greeted me warmly. "Ms. Hayes, welcome, we're all set for you. The room looks magnificent." He was right. The tables were draped in white linen, candles flickered, and the city lights twinkled through the floor-to-ceiling windows. It was perfect. A grand, beautiful, empty space. 7:00 p.m. came and went. Then 7:15, not a single guest had arrived. I sent a text to the family group chat. "Hey everyone, running a bit late, I'm here at the restaurant. Can't wait to see you." No replies. I called my mom, Karen. It went straight to voicemail. I called my dad. Voicemail. I called Jessica. Voicemail. A cold knot of dread began to tighten in my stomach. This wasn't just late, this was coordinated silence. My friend Ben was supposed to be flying in from the West Coast, but his flight had been delayed. He wasn't due to land for another few hours. He was the only non-family member I'd invited from out of town. Everyone else lived within a 30-minute drive. At 7:45 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was a text from Jessica. My heart leaped with a desperate flicker of hope, which was immediately extinguished by her words. The message was casual, almost breezy. "Hey, so sorry. Something massive came up. Don't wait up, everyone's at my promotion party instead. Totally last minute, Dad's idea, he wanted to surprise me. We'll celebrate you another time. Zoe." The air left my lungs. A promotion party? On my birthday? Everyone? I scrolled through social media with trembling fingers, and there it was. Jessica's Instagram story, posted just 20 minutes ago. It was a video panning across a crowded, noisy bar downtown. In the center of it all was my sister, holding a bottle of champagne, grinning from ear to ear. The camera zoomed in on my dad, Mark, raising a glass and shouting something I couldn't hear over the music. Then it panned to my mom, Karen, smiling weakly next to him. I saw my aunts, my uncles, my cousins, all of them. Every single person who was supposed to be celebrating with me was there, celebrating her. The caption read, "Surprise, my amazing family celebrating my promotion to senior partner. Best night ever." My blood ran cold. Senior partner, she'd been a PR consultant. That was a huge leap. But the sting wasn't just the lie, it was the sheer, calculated cruelty of it. They hadn't just forgot. They had chosen. They had actively decided that her career milestone was more important than my birthday. A date that had been on the calendar for months. The restaurant reservation, the deposit I'd paid, my excitement, it all meant nothing. 10 minutes later, as I was still reeling, another text came through. This time from my dad. By the way, I put the $4,000 dinner for Jess's party on your card. Hope that's fine. Attached was a blurry photo of a receipt from the bar where they were celebrating. My card. The emergency credit card I had given him years ago, when he was between jobs, with the strict instruction that it was for true emergencies only. The card I had, foolishly, never canceled. He had used it to pay for my sister's party, on my birthday, at the exact moment I was supposed to be hosting them. The audacity was breathtaking. It was a 1-2 punch designed to knock me out. First, the emotional gutting from my sister, then the financial violation from my father. They weren't just excluding me, they were making me pay for my own humiliation. My fingers were numb as I typed back a single, cold reply to my father. Noted. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. Not yet. A strange, icy calm washed over me. The project manager in my brain took over, assessing the damage, calculating the variables, and identifying the stakeholders in my personal catastrophe. My family had just defined the terms of our relationship. They saw me as a utility, a resource to be tapped and then discarded, an ATM and a party planner who wasn't worth an invitation to her own life. That night, I paid Julian for the empty room, the untouched food, the unpoured champagne. He was kind, offering his condolences for the unforeseen circumstances. I didn't correct him. They were entirely foreseen by everyone but me. I took the birthday cake, a beautiful 3-tiered creation meant for 60, back to my silent apartment. I lit a single candle, stuck it in the top, and blew it out alone. The wish I made wasn't for happiness or love, it was for clarity, and for retribution. The silence in my apartment that night was heavier than any sound. It was an active, pressing silence, filled with the ghosts of the laughter and conversation that were supposed to have filled the grand hall at the Gilded Compass. I sat on my sofa, the massive cake box on my coffee table looking like a monument to my own foolishness. The single wisp of smoke from the extinguished candle curled into the air and vanished. For a long time, I just stared at it, my mind a blank slate of shock. The initial, icy calm of my noted reply had begun to thaw, giving way to a raw, ragged hurt that felt like a physical injury. Every detail of the day replayed in my mind. The excitement of choosing my dress, the careful curation of the guest list, the phone calls with the restaurant to finalize the menu. I had poured so much of myself into this event, deluding myself into thinking that a grand gesture could somehow recalibrate my family's dynamics. I had hoped to create a memory so warm and inclusive that it would force them to see me, truly see me, as more than just reliable Lauren, the family's logistical backbone. Instead, they had taken my gesture, my money, and my heart, and casually discarded them all in favor of Jessica's shiny new promotion. The humiliation was a hot flush that spread from my chest to my face. I imagined them at the bar, clinking glasses, laughing, celebrating Jessica's success, while I sat alone in a room I had prepared for them. Did anyone even mention my name? Did a single person feel a pang of guilt? Or was I so thoroughly out of sight, out of mind? The thought was unbearable. My phone, which had been silent for hours, suddenly buzzed. It was Ben. His flight had just landed. Hey, I'm so sorry about the delay. I'll grab a cab and head straight to the restaurant. Can't wait to celebrate with you. His cheerful message was like a key turning in a lock I hadn't realized was rusted shut. The tears I'd been holding back finally came, hot and furious. I couldn't even bring myself to type a reply. I just called him. He answered on the first ring. Lauren, you okay? You sound. He trailed off. They're not here, Ben. I choked out, the words feeling like shards of glass in my throat. No one came. I told him everything, the text from Jessica, the Instagram story, the $4,000 charge from my dad. I expected sympathy, maybe some angry words on my behalf, but Ben was a software engineer. His mind worked in logic and systems. After a moment of stunned silence, his tone shifted from concerned friend to analytical problem solver. "Wait, go back to the text from your dad," he said, his voice sharp and focused. "He's a financial advisor, right? He knows better than anyone that using a credit card without authorization, especially one given for emergencies, is fraud. $4,000 isn't a small amount. And Jessica's promotion, you said senior partner, from a PR consultant, that's not just a promotion, Lauren, that's a quantum leap. That kind of jump usually requires a massive new client, a buyout, or something else. It feels off." His words cut through the fog of my emotional pain. He was right. I had been so consumed by the betrayal that I hadn't stopped to question the details. My father, who lectured me about saving for retirement if I bought a coffee that was too expensive, had just committed credit card fraud without a second thought. And Jessica's promotion? She was good at her job, I knew that. But she wasn't that good. She lacked the strategic depth for a senior partner role. Her talent was in schmoozing, in creating buzz, not in long-term client management or financial oversight. As Ben spoke, a memory surfaced, a tiny, insignificant detail from a few weeks ago. I'd been on the phone with my mom, Karen. She'd been complaining about my dad being stressed, mentioning he'd been making risky investments, trying to keep up with the neighbors. At the time, I dismissed it as typical chatter. But now, it seemed like a puzzle piece I hadn't known I was missing. My dad was in financial trouble. What if Jessica's promotion wasn't just a happy coincidence? What if it was all connected? What if this entire celebration, this sudden, urgent need to elevate Jessica, was a charade designed to hide something else? The hurt began to recede, replaced by a cold, sharp-edged curiosity. My family had built a narrative around me. Lauren, the planner, the stable one, the safety net. They relied on me to be predictable. But they never stopped to consider what would happen if the project manager turned her skills toward a different kind of project. A project aimed not at building something, but at dismantling a structure of lies. "Ben," I said, my voice steadier now, "can you do me a favor? Don't come to my apartment. Go to a hotel. I'll pay for it. I think I have some work to do, and I might need your help." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Whatever you need," he said, his voice firm. "I'm here." After we hung up, I walked back to the cake. I took a knife from the kitchen, cut a single, precise slice, and put it on a plate. As I ate the cloyingly sweet frosting, the echo of the empty grand hall in my mind was replaced by the quiet, methodical clicking of a plan falling into place. They thought I was the background character in their story. It was time to remind them who the author was. The morning after my non-birthday, I woke up with a chilling sense of purpose. The grief was still there, a dull ache beneath my ribs, but it was now overlaid with the cold grit of a project plan. My objective was simple: to understand the truth. Retribution could wait. First, I needed data. My father's actions were the most tangible starting point. The $4,000 charge. It wasn't just a betrayal, it was a clue. I immediately logged into my credit card account. There it was, a pending charge from the Azure Lounge, the upscale bar where they'd celebrated. But as I scanned the recent transactions, something else caught my eye. A series of smaller, but significant, charges over the past 2 months. There was a $500 charge at a high-end steakhouse 2 weeks ago, a $1,200 charge at a luxury watch store a month before that, and several cash advances, each for a few $100s, from ATMs near my father's golf club. None of them were emergencies. This wasn't a one-time lapse in judgment. This was a pattern. My father had been using my emergency card as his personal slush fund. The anger that flared up was sharp and clean. It was the anger of violated trust, of seeing my goodwill methodically exploited. I had given him that card when he'd been laid off from a previous job 5 years ago, a gesture of support to ensure he and my mom wouldn't have to worry about a sudden medical bill or car repair. He had never returned it, and I, foolishly, had never asked for it back, assuming it was tucked away in a drawer somewhere, forgotten. Now I saw that for him, it was never a safety net. It was an open line of credit. I immediately reported the card as stolen, freezing the account. I specified that only the charges from the last 24 hours were fraudulent, a strategic move to avoid a larger investigation that might tip him off. I needed him to think I had only noticed the party charge. The bank's fraud department was efficient, and they assured me they would handle it. That was step 1, contain the financial damage. Step 2 was understanding the why. Ben was my first call. "I need you to look into something for me," I said, my voice all business. Discreetly. I gave him the name of Jessica's PR firm and asked him to see if there was any public information or industry chatter about her senior partner promotion. Ben, a wizard of the digital world, knew exactly where to look beyond a simple Google search. "I'll check industry forums, press release archives, even the dark web if I have to," he said, only half joking. While Ben worked his magic, I decided to approach the problem from another angle. My mother, Karen, was not a conspirator by nature. She was a follower, someone who went along with the stronger personalities of my dad and sister to keep the peace. She was the weak link in their armor of deceit. I didn't call her. A phone call could be dismissed or ended abruptly. Instead, I drove to her house. The library where she worked part-time was only a few blocks away, and I knew she'd be home for lunch. I found her in the garden, listlessly watering her petunias. She looked pale and tired, and when she saw me, her face crumpled with a mixture of guilt and apprehension. "Lauren," she said, her voice barely a whisper, I'm so sorry about last night." I didn't offer her comfort. I didn't tell her it was okay. I just stood there, my expression unreadable, and let the silence hang between us. "Why, Mom?" I asked finally, her shoulders slumped. "Your father. He got the call yesterday afternoon that Jessica's deal went through. He said it was a once-in-a-lifetime moment and it had to be celebrated immediately. He can be very persuasive." "A deal?" I pressed. "What deal?" "Oh, I don't know the details," she said, waving a dismissive hand, a gesture I'd seen her use 1,000 times when she didn't want to engage. "Something about a new client, a big one. It's what got her the partnership." She wouldn't meet my eyes, focusing instead on a non-existent weed near her foot. She was hiding something. My project manager instincts flared. When a stakeholder is being evasive, you reframe the question. "Dad seems to be spending a lot of money lately," I said casually. "He seems stressed." Her head snapped up, her eyes wide with alarm. "What do you mean?" "He's fine. He's a financial advisor. He knows what he's doing." The defensiveness in her tone was a blaring red flag. It was then that I got my unexpected tip-off, not from what she said, but from what she did. Her phone buzzed from the patio table. The screen lit up, and for a split second, I saw the notification banner. It was an email alert, and the subject line was visible. "Urgent. Second margin call notice act, 78B." Before she could snatch the phone away, I had seen it. A margin call. That meant my father wasn't just making risky investments. He was trading on borrowed money from his brokerage, and his investments were failing so badly that the brokerage was demanding he deposit more funds or they would forcibly sell his assets at a loss to cover his debts. He wasn't just in trouble, he was on the brink of financial ruin. Suddenly, everything clicked into place with terrifying clarity. The secret credit card charges, the desperation for Jessica to land a big deal, the extravagant, frantic celebration. This wasn't a celebration of her success. It was a desperate attempt to project an image of wealth and stability they didn't have. Jessica's promotion was the lifeboat they were clinging to, and my dad was using my money to bail water. My mother saw the understanding dawn on my face. The color drained from hers. "Lauren, please," she stammered. "He was going to tell you. He just needs a little more time." I looked at my mother, at her weak excuses and her cultivated ignorance, and I felt nothing but a profound sense of disappointment. She wasn't just a bystander. She was a willing accomplice in their deception. I turned and walked away without another word. As I got in my car, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Ben. "You were right to be suspicious. There is no official press release. No industry announcement. I dug into her firm's internal employee portal, don't ask how, and her title is still PR consultant. There is no promotion, but I found something else. Her biggest client, a company called Novatech, just got acquired, and the acquisition was financed by a venture capital firm. The name of the firm is Markham Capital Partners." Markham, a portmanteau, Mark, Karen, and my last name, Hayes. My father hadn't just used my credit card. He had gambled his entire financial future, and he had made my sister a key player in his scheme. The unexpected tip-off hadn't just come from my mother's phone. It had come from all of them, and they had given me everything I needed to know. The name Markham Capital Partners echoed in my mind for the rest of the drive home. It was brazen, almost laughably arrogant. My father had created a venture capital firm, likely little more than a shell company, and named it after himself, my mother, and by extension, his children. He had positioned it as the financial backer for the acquisition of Novatech, my sister's main client. This wasn't just a family matter anymore. This had the stench of professional misconduct and potentially illegal activity. My grief had now been completely consumed by a cold, methodical resolve. This was a project, and I would manage it to completion. The first step was to map out the entire system, just as I would with any complex tech implementation. The key entities were my Mark, my sister Jessica, their respective companies, and this new entity, Markham Capital Partners. My first objective was to legitimize Ben's findings. I needed public-facing, undeniable proof. I spent hours that evening combing through business registries, SEC filings, and financial news archives. As a project manager, I knew where to find corporate information. It took some digging, but I found it. Markham Capital Partners was registered as an LLC just 3 months prior. The registered agent and sole officer listed was my father, Mark Hayes. The address on file was a simple P.O. box in a neighboring town. It was a ghost company, created for a single purpose. Next, I investigated the Novatech acquisition. I found a small press release on a minor financial wire service, the kind designed to be found if you were looking, but to fly under the radar of major news outlets. It announced Novatech's acquisition by a larger tech conglomerate, with the deal's financing facilitated by Markham Capital Partners. The language was vague, but the implication was clear. My father's shell company was presented as a legitimate financial player. Jessica's role in this was becoming clearer. As Novatech's PR consultant, she would have been perfectly positioned to influence the narrative of the acquisition. She could have introduced her father as a boutique investor, spinning his involvement as a strategic partnership. She hadn't earned a promotion. She had been a willing participant in a deceptive scheme designed to give my father credibility and, most likely, a hefty commission or finder's fee. A fee he desperately needed to cover his margin calls. This was the big deal my mother had mentioned. It wasn't Jessica's win, it was my father's lifeline. The $4,000 party wasn't just a celebration, it was a performance. It was a desperate act of fake it till you make it, designed to project an image of success to the outside world and to themselves. They were celebrating the successful execution of their con, and they had used my stolen money to pay for the champagne. The next piece of the puzzle was my father's own financial situation. I couldn't legally access his brokerage accounts, but I could look for public records. I ran a search for liens, bankruptcies, or judgments against him, and there it was. A federal tax lien filed by the IRS 2 years ago for over $80,000 in unpaid income taxes. It was still active. My father, the financial advisor who managed other people's money, was seriously delinquent with the government. This explained the desperation, the high-risk margin trading, and the creation of a shell company. He was in a deep financial hole, and instead of digging his way out honestly, he was trying to construct a precarious ladder out of lies and my sister's career. With Ben's help, we started piecing together the timeline. My father incorporates Markham Capital. Jessica begins positioning her father to her client, Novatech. The acquisition deal is formulated. My father, using the legitimacy of his shell company, facilitates the deal, likely taking a percentage. But the money isn't coming in fast enough to cover his trading losses, hence the margin calls. He starts skimming from my emergency credit card to cover small expenses and maintain his lifestyle. Then, when the deal finally closes, they throw a huge, loud party, a declaration of victory, and in his arrogance and relief, he charges the whole thing to my card, seeing it as his right. He probably saw it as a small tax for his brilliance. The final piece of critical evidence came from an unexpected source. I remembered my dad had once helped me set up my retirement portfolio using the same firm where he worked. We still had a joint family account there, something he'd insisted on for transparency, though it held only a nominal amount of money. I rarely checked it. but his insistence on transparency now seemed like a fatal mistake on his part. I logged into the portal. While I couldn't see his personal trading accounts, the platform had a document sharing feature. And there, misfiled in the shared folder, were two documents that made my blood run cold. They were account statements for Markham Capital Partners. He must have uploaded them by accident, thinking he was in his own portal. The statements showed a massive wire transfer into the account, the commission from the Novatech deal. And then, a series of frantic outgoing transfers to his personal brokerage account, followed by transfers to luxury retailers and a payment to a high-end car dealership. He wasn't just covering his debts. He was squandering the money as fast as it came in. The documents were the smoking gun. I downloaded them immediately, saved them in multiple secure locations, and deleted the access logs from the portal. He would never know I had seen them. I now had everything I needed. The fraudulent credit card charges, the tax lien, the shell company registration, the proof that Jessica's promotion was a fiction. And most damningly, the bank statements proving the entire scheme was a desperate cash grab orchestrated by my father. The web wasn't just unraveled, it was laid bare on my screen, a testament to greed, arrogance, and profound familial betrayal. With the evidence compiled, the investigation phase of my project was complete. Now it was time for execution. My objective had shifted from understanding the truth to ensuring the truth was seen by everyone. This wasn't about screaming matches or tearful confrontations. My family dealt in loud, messy emotions and grandiose gestures. My revenge would be the opposite, quiet, precise, and inescapable. It would be a simple, elegant system designed to deliver information with maximum impact. My greatest asset, besides the evidence itself, was my friend Ben. I called him and laid out the plan. "I need a website," I said. "A single web page, clean, professional, and completely irrefutable. It needs to be a digital dossier." Ben was silent for a moment, and then he let out a low whistle. "A truth repository," he said. "Password protected, I assume?" "No," I replied. "No password, I want it public, but the link will be private, shared only by me. It needs to be simple, fast-loading, and impossible to take down quickly. Can you host it somewhere obscure, somewhere they can't just call and complain to have it removed?" "Consider it done," Ben said, a hint of admiration in his voice. "I'll host it on a decentralized server. It'll be bulletproof. What's the content?" Over the next 48 hours, Ben and I worked in perfect sync. He built the framework of the website, a stark, minimalist design with a plain white background and black text. The headline at the top was simple: "The Markham Capital Story." My job was to curate the evidence into a devastatingly clear narrative. I structured the webpage like a project timeline, a form I was intimately familiar with. Phase 1, the foundation of debt. This section started with a high-resolution scan of my father's $80,000 federal tax lien, publicly sourced and completely verifiable. Beneath it, I wrote a simple caption: "A pattern of financial mismanagement." I then included a redacted list of the unauthorized charges on my credit card, totaling over $7,000, with a note explaining the card was provided for family emergencies only. I included the $4,000 charge for the Azure Lounge with a date and time stamp: my 32nd birthday. Phase 2, the corporate shell. Here, I embedded the official state registration documents for Markham Capital Partners, LLC, highlighting my father's name as the sole officer and the P.O. box address. I added a paragraph explaining the concept of a shell company and its typical uses. I included the small press release about the Novatech acquisition, with the phrase, "financing facilitated by Markham Capital Partners," circled in red. Phase 3, the professional deceit. This was Jessica's section. I started with a screenshot of her Instagram post celebrating her promotion to senior partner. Directly below it, I embedded the internal directory screenshot Ben had acquired, showing her official title was still PR consultant. The contrast was stark and humiliating. I added a short, factual sentence: "No official promotion has been registered or announced by her firm." Phase 4, the payoff and the payout. This was the kill shot. I uploaded the 2 bank statements for Markham Capital that my father had mistakenly left in the shared folder. I redacted the account numbers but left the transaction descriptions and amounts visible. The massive incoming wire transfer from the Novatech deal was the first entry. The subsequent outgoing transfers were listed chronologically. Transfer to E-Trade Securities, payment to Lexus Financial Services, wire to Cartier Jewelers. It was an undeniable ledger of his greed. I ended the page with a simple, factual summary of events, written in the detached, objective tone of a post-mortem project report. It concluded with the sentence, "This narrative was constructed using publicly available records and verified financial documents to provide a clear and accurate picture of the events leading up to and following the Novatech acquisition." The entire webpage was a monument to their lies, built from their own actions. There was no opinion, no emotional language, no accusations, just facts laid out in an orderly, undeniable sequence. It was more damning than any angry rant could ever be. Ben worked his magic on the technical side. He registered a cryptic domain name, something like Project Phoenix Report, net. That couldn't be traced back to us. He ensured the site was mirrored on multiple servers across different countries, making it nearly impossible to scrub from the internet quickly. He also set it up so I would get a notification the instant the link was clicked, and from what IP address. "It's ready," he told me on Thursday night, exactly 2 days after my birthday. "All you have to do is send the link." I stared at the URL he sent me. It was a digital bomb and my finger was on the trigger. I wasn't scared. I wasn't even angry anymore. I felt a profound sense of clarity. My entire life, I had been the one to manage their chaos, to smooth over their mistakes, to absorb their selfishness. I had been the family's project manager, tasked with keeping the dysfunctional project of us afloat. Now I was delivering my final status report, a report that would mark the project as a catastrophic failure. I decided I wouldn't send it right away. The timing had to be perfect. It needed to arrive when they were unsuspecting, vulnerable, and together. A weekend morning? No, too slow. A weekday evening? They might be distracted. I needed a moment of maximum psychological impact. I needed the dead of night, when the world is quiet and the glowing screen of a phone holds your complete attention. I would wait. The plan was set. The trap was built. All that was left was to spring it. I waited another full day. On Friday, I went to work and performed my duties with detached precision. I led meetings, updated timelines, and managed my team with a calm that felt almost alien. My colleagues asked if I'd had a nice birthday. I smiled and said, it was very illuminating. No one from my family had reached out. The silence from their end was absolute. I imagined they were riding high on their perceived victory, confident that I would, as always, eventually swallow the disrespect and come back into the fold. They probably assumed my one word, noted. Reply was a sign of quiet resignation, the precursor to my eventual acceptance of the new family hierarchy where Jessica was the celebrated star and I was the reliable but overlooked financier. They had no idea that my silence wasn't surrender. It was the quiet before a storm I had engineered with painstaking detail. That night, I stayed up late. I wasn't anxious or jittery. I was focused, like a marathon runner in the final mile. I watched a movie, tidied my apartment, and drank a cup of chamomile tea. At 2:45 a.m. on Saturday morning, I opened my messaging app and navigated to the family group chat. The last message was still my own from Tuesday night, the unanswered question about whether they were running late for my party. It felt like an artifact from another lifetime. I copied the link Ben had given me. It looked innocuous, a string of random words and letters. I pasted it into the message field. Below it, I typed a single, simple sentence. Watch this before sunrise. My finger hovered over the send button. This was the point of no return. For a fleeting second, I thought of my mother, of the weak but not entirely malicious person caught in my father's gravitational pull. I thought of the childhood I'd shared with Jessica, of the few good memories buried under years of rivalry and resentment. But then I remembered the echoing silence of the empty restaurant, the casual cruelty of Jessica's text, and the breathtaking arrogance of my father's $4,000 charge. They had made their choices. Now, I was making mine. I pressed send at exactly 2:47 a.m. The message landed in the chat with a quiet digital chime. Then I turned my phone on silent and placed it face down on the nightstand. I wouldn't watch the fallout in real time. The report would speak for itself. I went to sleep. I woke up naturally just after 7 a.m. The sun was streaming through my window. For a moment, everything felt normal. Then, the memory of what I had done rushed back. I picked up my phone. It was a minefield of notifications. 27 missed calls. 42 text messages. The screen was a chaotic mosaic of names: Dad, Mom, Jessica, Aunt Carol, Uncle Steve. I ignored them all and opened the web analytics page Ben had set up for me. The first click on the link was registered at 3:15 a.m. The IP address was from my parents' house. The second click came a minute later from the same IP. My mother, probably. The third click was at 3:20 a.m. from an IP address that geolocated to Jessica's apartment building downtown. Then, the floodgates opened. Between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m., there was a flurry of activity. The link was clearly being shared. I saw IPs from my aunt's house in the suburbs, my cousin's dorm room at the state university, my uncle's office downtown. My little digital bomb had detonated and the shrapnel was hitting its targets. I finally turned to the messages. I started with my father's. They were a masterclass in narcissistic rage. The first, at 3:25 a.m., was just, "Call me. Now." The next was, "What is this? What have you done?" Then came the threats. "You take this down immediately, Lauren. This is slander. This is illegal. You have no idea the trouble you're in." The final one, sent at 6:30 a.m., was almost pleading. "You're destroying this family. For what? Because you were upset about a party." Jessica's messages were a different flavor of panic focused on her career. "LAUREN, WTF is this? My boss is on this family chat. You have to take it down. My career is over. This is insane. You're jealous. You've always been jealous. I'm going to sue you. I swear to God, I will sue you for everything you have." My mother's texts were just a series of desperate, heartbreaking pleas. "Lauren, please call me. We can fix this. Your father he's not well. Please, sweetie, don't do this to us, to yourself." The irony was rich. She was worried about me doing this to myself after what they had done to me. The most telling communication, however, wasn't a text message. It was an email that arrived at 6:58 a.m. It was from the managing partner of Jessica's PR firm, a man who was, as she'd pointed out in her frantic text, in the extended family chat. The email was brief and cold. Subject: urgent meeting. "Jessica, be in my office at 9 a.m. with your father. Do not be late." The digital reckoning was complete. The information had been delivered. The system I had built had performed its function perfectly. I stood up and walked to my kitchen to make coffee. As the machine gurgled to life, I felt a strange sense of peace. It wasn't the giddy joy of victory. It was the quiet, solid satisfaction of a project successfully concluded. The sun was rising, just as I had instructed. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like it was rising just for me. The days that followed the 2:47 a.m. link drop were a study in contrasts. My world was quieter than it had ever been, while theirs descended into chaos. The barrage of calls and texts stopped abruptly around noon on Saturday. The silence that replaced it was heavy with the weight of consequences. I later learned from a cousin, who called me hesitantly to offer a combination of awe and apology, that the 9 a.m. meeting at Jessica's firm had been a bloodbath. My father, in his typical arrogant fashion, had tried to bluster his way through it, threatening legal action against the firm for even questioning him. But the evidence on the website was irrefutable. Jessica was fired by lunchtime for gross misconduct and for bringing the firm into disrepute. The client, Novatech, upon learning that their PR consultant's father had acted as a financial facilitator in their acquisition through a shell company, immediately launched an internal review. The larger tech conglomerate that had acquired them was furious. The fallout for my father was even more severe. The managing partner at Jessica's firm had connections on Wall Street. He made a few calls. By Monday, the state's financial regulatory authority had opened an official investigation into Mark Hayes and Markham Capital Partners for unlicensed brokerage activities and misrepresentation. His own firm suspended him pending the outcome of the investigation. The margin calls he had been so desperate to cover became the least of his worries. He was facing the potential loss of his license and even criminal charges. My mother tried to call me once more on Sunday, her voice a ragged whisper on the voicemail she left. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She just said, "I don't understand how you could be so cruel." I never called her back. Her inability to see my actions as a reaction to their cruelty was the final confirmation that my decision had been the right one. She wasn't a victim. She was a co-signer on their moral bankruptcy. Ben flew back home that Sunday, but not before we met for brunch. He looked at me across the table, a small, proud smile on his face. "Project Phoenix was a success," he said, raising his coffee cup. "So what's next for the project manager?" "A new project," I said, feeling a lightness I hadn't experienced in years. "Project Lauren, Phase 1 is a full system audit and the decommissioning of toxic assets." He laughed. "I like the sound of that." And that's what I did. I started by severing the financial ties that had bound me to my family for so long. I closed the joint account, changed all my passwords, and put alerts on my credit report. I engaged a lawyer to send my father a cease and desist letter regarding the fraudulent use of my credit card, making it clear that if he contacted me again, I would press charges. It was a cold, clean cut. The extended family fractured. Some, like the cousin who called me, saw the truth and were disgusted by what my parents and sister had done. They reached out, offering quiet support. Others, loyal to my father's charismatic image, condemned me as a vindictive monster who had aired the family's dirty laundry. I accepted both reactions with equal detachment. I wasn't looking for allies or enemies. I was looking for peace. Over the next few months, I poured my energy into myself. I started using the money I would have spent on lavish family gifts and obligatory holiday dinners to travel. I went hiking in the mountains, a solo trip where the only deadline was the sunset. I visited art museums and let myself get lost in the beauty of other people's creations. I reconnected with friends I had neglected, building a chosen family based on mutual respect and genuine affection, not on obligation and guilt. The old life, the one where I was the reliable hub of a dysfunctional wheel, faded into the background. My father ended up surrendering his financial advisor license as part of a settlement and was fined heavily. He and my mother had to sell their large house to cover his debts and the tax lien. I heard through the grapevine they moved into a small rental apartment. Jessica struggled to find work in public relations again. Her name had been tarnished, and the story of her firing became a quiet cautionary tale in her industry. The last I heard, she was doing freelance social media work for small local businesses. I don't know if they ever understood the real reason I did what I did. They probably still believe I acted out of jealousy or spite, but they're wrong. I did it because they left me in an empty room meant for 60 people with a $4,000 bill for my own humiliation. They taught me that my love and support were disposable. They showed me that, to them, I was not a person but a utility. So I did what any good project manager would do when a project is failing. Its stakeholders are corrupt, and its foundation is rotten. I archived it. And then I started a new one.